Welcome to On the Money Line, a podcast by MMA Play 365. I'm Newsome, and I'm here to break down UFC Edmonton, which goes down this weekend on Saturday. We're in Canada. We're not at the Apex again for the second week running. So yeah, absolutely loving life. And look, actually, listen, I don't hate the Apex. I don't mind maybe one event a month at the Apex. I do think that, I've said it before, that it comes with some positives around it, like you can hear the coaches, the strikes are a little bit louder, there's some nice things to be had at the Apex, smaller cage as well, it's always interesting for certain matchups, but I just don't want 3 of them a month, so I'm happy that we're on back-to-back events that are on the road, and yeah, we're in Canada, we're in Edmonton, and I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong about this, that the last time the UFC went to Canada, I'm pretty sure that the majority of the Canadians lost their fights as well. It was a really bad night for the Canadians, and they don't seem to have too much luck in those sort of events that are at home. So, maybe the trend follows, maybe the trend gets crushed for this week. We'll find out for sure. But as for the card itself, obviously there's plenty of Canadians on the card. I think it's a pretty decent fight night, if I'm being honest. There's 14 fights as well, so things should go really, really fast throughout the night. And yeah, there's quite a few heavyweights in there also. So yeah, I think that, it could be a fun card. I think there's some well-matched fights. I think the fights will play out really well as well. So I'm actually really looking forward to the event this weekend. But just before we get into the breakdowns, as always, if you want to jump into the action this weekend, then you can do so at MMA Play 365. We have something for every type of gambler. If you were a fun gambler last weekend, you'd have had the option of 20 potential parlay picks to create your own parlays if that's what you wanted to do. If you want pre-made parlays, we had 4 pre-made parlays. We had a 2-leg, 2 3-legs, and a 4-leg as well. So we've got plenty for the fun gamblers. We've got the long-term gamblers section as well. So if you're somebody that wants to understand why you're betting on a certain fighter, or maybe you're somebody that, makes your own bets and you just want to use the long-term gamblers section to maybe, give you clearance on a bet or make you pass on a bet, then we've got full written breakdowns for the recommended bet section for those specific bets. Or if you're somebody that just wants to follow exactly what the handicapper, which is myself, bets on, where my money goes, then we've got an official bet section as well. And of course, with every single package, you get included Bayes AI, which is our UFC prediction software that gives you a percentage prediction for every possible outcome of every fight on every UFC card. And that's all included in every subscription. And the subscriptions, you just have to choose how long you want that subscription for. Do you want just one event? Do you want to do it monthly, or do you want to do it annually? All 3 are very well priced due to our ethos, which is we want you to make that money back that you've spent with us as quick as possible so you can start profiting on the bets that you make. That's all at MMAplay365.com. But now you know what time it is. With the intro out the way, with the promo out the way, let's get breaking some fights down, and we start in the main event. We're in the men's flyweight division. We've got Moreno versus Amir Albazi. Now, this is a really good fight from a divisional perspective. There is a little bit of an unknown in the division, in the flyweight division right now, just because, it was supposed to have been, or at least we thought, Mohamed Mokaev that was going to be next to challenge for the title, but that situation happened with Mokaev. I'm not 100% sure what the truth is. There's always 2 sides to every story, but Mokaev no longer with the UFC. So then the UFC bring in Caio from Rizin to challenge Pantoja for the title. But then you've got Brandon Royval, who is the absolutely solidified number 1 contender to the division. So you would have to think that the winner of Pantoja and Asakura will fight Brandon Royval, but the problem there is if Asakura beats Pantoja and potentially it's close, or maybe it's a war, the UFC are likely going to run that back. Historically, that's the type of fight that the UFC would run back. So then Brandon Royval wouldn't get that next shot. So maybe this fight between Moreno and Albazi would potentially be, it's the winner's either going to go into a queue for the title, but if there is a rematch with the flyweight title between Pantoja and Asakura, maybe it's the winner of this fight does fight Brandon Royval for a number 1 contenders fight, which, to be honest, I know might be quite frustrating for Brandon Royval, but if it's Brandon Moreno that wins this fight against Albazi, then Moreno and Royval are actually 1-1 in the UFC anyway, so they would have a trilogy fight to see which one goes 2-1 over who. So I actually wouldn't mind that happening, if I'm being honest. I think that would be a good potential future fight. But of course, Moreno would have to get through Albazi. Now, with Albazi, I bet Albazi against Kai Kara-France. I'm pretty sure I got plus money, or maybe it was a pick'em. But I think that I got away with one then, and it's actually rare that I say that. Normally, if you follow me, or if you follow me on Twitter, or X as it's now called, you'll see that I do often complain about being on the wrong end of the bad decisions, but sometimes I'm on the right end of the bad decisions, and I believe the Albazi one was one of them. I think that Kai Kara-France should have won the fight, but Albazi won it, and now he's in this spot here. I just have some reservations with Albazi because of that fight against Kai Kara-France. Like, I love Albazi's style. Like, the dude's short, he's compact, he's got power in both hands, he's a very educated striker, he's a good wrestler, he's a good grappler, he's the full package, and you can see that he's got 5-round cardio, but there is a bit of an asterisk on that, and I'll explain why. It's 5-round cardio at a very low pace, low volume, and that's what I worry about for him in this fight with Moreno, because Moreno is a solidified 5-round type of fighter. He's a former champion. He's going to go 5 rounds, no problem at all, at a high pace. He consistently puts up good numbers, above the 100 strikes landed, per fight. And of course, obviously, that's over 5 rounds. But Amir Albazi never even got anywhere close to that against Kai Kara-France. And the majority of the fight was a striking war. So what happened was, why Albazi made it at least close, because it was a close fight. I just think that Albazi should have lost. But what made it close is because even though Kai Kara-France was racking up good volume on Albazi, every time Albazi landed, it was a hard punch. It was big impact strikes. And like I say, it was low volume. And I think against Brandon Moreno, he's going to need more than that. I think he got away with it once against Kai Kara-France. He can't get away with it against Brandon Moreno. I don't think he'll get away with it against Brandon Moreno. I think if Albazi comes in with a low volume approach, I think he's going to lose the fight. And this time he's not going to get the decision, because that's the other thing. Where Albazi won a couple of those rounds was being able to wrestle and grapple Kai Kara-France. Now, Kara-France has got good takedown defense, and he can get back up to his feet as well. He's a high level fighter. It's just Brandon Moreno, I think, is a better defensive wrestler, and he's definitely a better grappler than Kai Kara-France. So where Albazi had his moments against Kara-France to make it close, to get the edge on that scorecard, on that decision, I just don't think he's going to have those edges against Moreno, because I think Moreno's BJJ is better than Albazi's. Maybe Albazi's wrestling might be a bit better than Moreno's, but we're literally clutching at straws here, because Moreno is elite in every aspect of MMA. And then when you look at the striking, I think Albazi's dangerous striking. Do I think he can hurt Moreno? I actually do. Like, this is the difference between Moreno and Kara-France, is whereas Kara-France was able to stay safe defensively striking, that's because Kara-France is a better striker than Moreno. So, but again, you're clutching at straws here as well, because it's not as if Moreno's a bad striker. I think Moreno is tough. He's got that Mexican bloodline, so he's definitely going to be tough. It's going to be hard to put him out. Like, the Mexican fighters, not just in MMA but in boxing, combat sports, they're predominantly known for just being really tough and really hard to put out there and to get away from you, and that's what Brandon Moreno's like. So I think from a striking perspective, it's going to be close. We're going to have one of these fights where Moreno's putting a shitload of volume on Albazi, but Albazi's hitting Moreno with hard shots when he does land. So it almost comes down to what the judges prefer, and we've got absolutely no idea what they're scoring, what they prefer on the night. So from a striking perspective, it's going to be close, but I just have to favour the fighter that I think can put up 100 plus significant strikes without any problem, who's got cardio at 100 plus strikes, over 5 rounds as well. I just can't say that about Albazi. Yes, he can fight 5 rounds. He can, save some energy, then come back in another round. Like, he did manage his energy efficiently, but that's energy based on low volume. If Albazi's forced into a high volume fight, or either he's in a high volume fight or he's low volume and loses the fight, he's going to put himself in a situation where I'm not confident saying that he's going to be able to put up good volume over 5 rounds and keep that cardio and have that same intensity and pressure as what Moreno's going to bring. And then when it comes to Albazi needing to go to plan B with his wrestling and grappling, I kind of don't think that's there either. So from a stylistic perspective, I do think it's a good fight for Moreno. So for those reasons, I'm picking Brandon Moreno to win this fight. And in the next fight, in the co-main event, we've got a co-main event that's 5 rounds. We've got another one 2 weeks in a row. And I think the reason why this is 5 rounds, and I like the fact that it's 5 rounds, by the way, because I kind of feel like these fights at the top of the women's flyweight division, in fact, I've not even introduced the fighters. We've got Rose Namajunas versus Erin Blanchfield. And yeah, look, I think the reason why this is 5 rounds is I'm sure this was supposed to be the headliner, and it was announced as the headliner for this event. But then somewhere along the line, the UFC have changed things up and slid Moreno and Albazi into the main event, but still kept this as 5 rounds because contractually it will have been signed at 5 rounds. But I'm glad that they've done that because, like I say, this is a fight at the top of the women's division. I think we're going to see a lot of grappling, a lot of scrambles, and I love those types of fights. So I'm really happy that this is 5 rounds, and I think it's one of these 5 rounds that I'm actually really excited for because I think it's going to be a good fight. From a striking perspective, Rose Namajunas all day long. Like Erin Blanchfield, she's shown that she's improved her striking over her time in the UFC, and she definitely has. Like, she's better now than what she was when she first came in. But the issue is that striking, she could get away with it in some fights, but now she's fighting towards the top of the division. The striking, you can see that there is a gap in skill with her opponent. So obviously last time out against Manon Fiorot, she didn't have anything for Manon Fiorot at all. I do think a big part of that, though, was played into Fiorot's physicality. Like, Fiorot was just absolutely massive in there, like way bigger, way stronger. The pop on her punches will have been felt harder for Blanchfield than previous opponents as well, and I think that all factors in. Whereas Rose Namajunas, she's not going to have that excessive strength and build and physicality as what Manon Fiorot had. However, Rose Namajunas is a very technical fighter from a striking perspective, Muay Thai kind of kickboxing style. And yeah, I think that Erin Blanchfield, again, there's going to be a gap in skill here because she's fighting one of the elite fighters in the division who is predominantly a striker, and that's where Blanchfield is always going to have her problems. You go to, maybe rank 10 to 15 or maybe outside of the rankings, and Blanchfield striking, she would probably be able to beat a predominant striker outside of the rankings, but when you get to the top of the division, it changes, it matters. So I think Namajunas is going to have the striking advantage. So I think Blanchfield is going to be wrestling and grappling here, and I think she's going to have more success than she had last time with Fiorot because of that physicality. Blanchfield just did not have the strength and the power to match Fiorot to be able to take her down. Like, I think that was one of the most clear advantages that I've seen from a fight, where you can say that physicality absolutely played a massive part in the fight. Whereas this fight, I think Rose Namajunas can get taken down. I think the scrambles and the grappling is going to be fun to watch, but I think Erin Blanchfield is going to be the better grappler, the better in the scrambles, and I think it's going to be a fight of two styles here. You're going to have Rose Namajunas that's absolutely the better striker, and you're going to have Blanchfield that's going to be absolutely the better grappler. I do think Rose Namajunas' striking is going to be more of an advantage than Blanchfield with a grappling, but I just feel we're going to see more of the grappling than the striking in this fight. I think it's a fight that's going to be won and lost because of the takedowns, because of the top control time, and I think if Blanchfield can start settling on Rose Namajunas or maybe take her back within a scramble, backpacker, potentially threaten with rear naked chokes, I think that's going to be Blanchfield's game here, and I kind of think it's going to work. It's going to be very close. Like, I do think that the fight is going to go 5 rounds. If there is a finish, I would imagine it'd be a submission opposed to a knockout, which you would then have to make the good educated assumption that the finish has come from Blanchfield with the submission opposed to Rose Namajunas. So maybe Blanchfield's got the finishing upside here. But if it does go to a decision, which I do anticipate it's going to, I think that it's going to be a very close decision. Rose Namajunas will absolutely, in my opinion, take 2 rounds from Blanchfield. Blanchfield, I think, will take 2 rounds from Rose Namajunas. There's going to be a couple of rounds along the way, though, that are going to be super close. And yeah, I could see a really close decision, potentially a split decision. I think it's a super well-matched fight. But like I say, I've got a funny feeling that it's going to be a fight that's won and lost within the grappling aspect opposed to the striking. And for that reason, I do have to side with Blanchfield. For those reasons, I'm picking Erin Blanchfield to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got Marc-Andre Barriault versus Dustin Stoltzfus. So Barriault in Canada, the fans are going to be going wild for Barriault, who's up on the main card. Now, with Dustin Stoltzfus, I like Dustin Stoltzfus as a fighter. Like, he'll bring it to anybody. Like, look at that fight that he had with Bruno Ferreira. Bruno Ferreira he was tiring and gassed in that fight. Like, we saw Bruno Ferreira last weekend go 3 rounds with Abus Magomedov, and he didn't look overly tired, Bruno Ferreira. But in that Dustin Stoltzfus fight, and you'll have heard me break this down in last week's podcast, and that's the reason I bet Abus Magomedov against Bruno Ferreira, because Dustin Stoltzfus took it to Bruno Ferreira to the point where Bruno Ferreira was throwing, desperation strikes, low percentage strikes, the spinning back fist. And yeah, like I said last week, he caught him with one. But if he hadn't have caught Dustin Stoltzfus with that, if Dustin Stoltzfus had got through that round, I think Stoltzfus would have ended up really taking over that fight, because Bruno Ferreira was gassed. So Stoltzfus brings the fight to every opponent, and I love that about him. I think in this fight, though, he's going to be walking into a lot of danger. Again, just like he did with Bruno Ferreira. Now, with Marc-Andre Barriault won't tire like Ferreira. So this is where I think Stoltzfus is in a bit of a difficult situation here, because with the way he fights, I think it plays into Barriault. Barriault is physical, he's big, he's strong. And I don't think Stoltzfus is going to have the physicality to match Barriault. And again, and I say this all the time, I think the hardest thing to predict in MMA pre-fight is who's going to have the physical advantages, unless it's like super, super obvious. And Stoltzfus is built big as well. I just got a funny feeling Barriault is going to be the more physical fighter. And especially in the clinch as well, Stoltzfus does crash forward. I think Barriault, again, it aids his game. Barriault will love to get hold of the clinch, be physical, get his hands on his opponents, get in the clinch. He's got that good dirty boxing with the uppercuts. And it wouldn't shock me at all to see Barriault actually knock Stoltzfus out with those uppercuts, or at least start the beginning of the end of the fight, if that makes sense. I think Barriault's going to have a lot of success in the clinch. Again, dirty boxing, landing the uppercuts. I think he's going to hurt Stoltzfus, start wearing on him due to accumulation of volume. And then I could genuinely potentially see Barriault knocking him out as well, or finishing him via TKO. I mean, you never know with these UFC gloves now. They seem to have stopped one-punch KOs. But, I think Barriault's going to be able to put it on Stoltzfus. I think he's going to be good where this fight is going to play out. I think there's going to be a lot of this fight played out in the clinch, which favours Barriault. And I think Barriault is more physical as well. And listen, Stoltzfus will be in this fight. He'll be coming forwards. He's quite an exciting fighter. He doesn't sit back and he's not low volume. He will get in the face of his opponents. I really think that suits Barriault here. So for those reasons, I'm picking Marc-Andre Barriault to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got Caio Machado versus Brendson Ribeiro. And this is a fight that, I'll be honest with you, straight from the get-go, I've got absolutely no idea how this fight's going to play out. From a divisional perspective, from a divisional ranking perspective, Caio Machado and Brendson Ribeiro are low down in the UFC. I think the UFC level fighters, but I think from a ranking perspective, they are very low down in the division. However, that's more said for Ribeiro than Caio Machado, because Machado's actually coming down from heavyweight. So again, this adds another unknown, bit of I wouldn't say a red flag, but it adds more of an unknown to the fight, because we've got no idea how Machado is going to look. I've got a funny feeling we're going to actually see him look great and shredded on the scales. I really believe that. I think that coming down, he's one of these fighters that it's right to come down to 205. So I think that we're going to see Machado look great on the scales, but how does he perform? We've got no idea, because we've never seen him at light heavyweight. I mean, look at Jared Cannonier, for example. He started at heavyweight, came down to light heavyweight, then he came down to middleweight, and we've got no idea how he's going to look at middleweight. Turns out that he's a monster, so sometimes coming down in weight helps. And, with Caio Machado, he could come down and look phenomenal, but he could also come down and look flat. I said flat, by the way, not fat. I genuinely think he's going to come in good shape, but we just don't know how he's going to look. And then you've got Brendson Ribeiro on the other side, who is live by the sword, die by the sword. He's going to come at you 100%. He's going to try and knock you out. And if you knock him out in the process, so be it. So it's one of these fights where I genuinely have no idea. If you're dangerous and really adamant that you want to bet on this fight, I would probably go in for the underdog just for the sake of the number. But I really don't know. From a striking perspective, is Caio Machado's power going to come down from heavyweight? Is he going to be a super heavy hitter? Again, we just do not know. What we know is Brendson Ribeiro is hell on wheels. He'll come forwards. He'll be in your face. He's trying to knock you out, but he'll leave openings, and he'll be, he's able to be hit himself. So again, like I say, I just don't know. I'm actually even though Ribeiro's the underdog, which I would normally take in this situation, I don't know. I'm siding with Caio Machado. I think Machado's got a little bit of wrestling that might be able to nullify, that explosive, fast-paced, aggressive Ribeiro. But then Caio Machado's coming down from heavyweight, so again, he might have the physical advantages here. Like I say, I've got a funny feeling he's going to show up in shape as well. Yeah, I don't know. Normally I would take the underdog, but I'm kind of leaning towards Caio Machado. He's got a different level of his game that he might be able to go to if things are a little bit overwhelming on the feet. And again, takes Ribeiro late, maybe Ribeiro tires, but what's Machado's cardio like over 3 rounds at light heavyweight? Again, we don't know. So yeah, look, I'm not going to spend any more time on this. It's obviously a low confident pick, but I'm picking Caio Machado to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got the Black Beast in the heavyweight division, Derrick Lewis versus Jhonata Diniz. Now, Jhonata Diniz, I think this is a good test for him to see exactly where he's at. And you could argue that it was last time out against Carl Williams. Look, I think I had like a 4 or 4.5 unit bet on Carl Williams last time out. I thought that was absolutely easy money for him, and it should have been. We saw in the 3rd round it should have been. Carl Williams, high level. Or it's not I wouldn't say a high-level wrestler in MMA. Like, I wouldn't put him in that category just yet. But the volume of takedowns that he was landing in his fights were ridiculous. Didn't bother striking with any of his opponents. Went in, took them down, slammed them down. And if they got back up, that's fine. He goes again. Carl Williams had great MMA wrestling cardio for a heavyweight. So I thought Diniz was easy money for him. Carl Williams goes in there, doesn't shoot a single takedown in 2 rounds, or he might have shot one half-assed takedown, not really completed it, and then just decided to strike with Jhonata Diniz. We'd never, and again, this happens every now and again, we'd never seen that from Carl Williams before. We didn't anticipate seeing it in that fight, but he did, and look, he played right into Diniz's game. The issue is, in the 3rd round, Carl Williams goes for a takedown, gets a takedown, controls the round, batters Diniz on top, and you're thinking, where was this in one of the other 2 rounds? So, because of the reason why I'm talking about that is I still don't think that Diniz has had that solid test yet. Williams should have been the solid test from the wrestling and grappling perspective, and it kind of was in the 3rd round. We saw where Diniz is at, but against Derrick Lewis, this is a striking test here, because how many good strikers have we seen come against Derrick Lewis, where we're talking about the fight before the fight saying, yeah, Derrick Lewis is at a significant technical disadvantage from a striking perspective. His opponent's technically better combination, sharper striking. These are all the same things that apply to Diniz in this fight. Well, then Derrick Lewis comes in there and just Derrick Lewis as somebody, Black Beast somebody, and just knocks them out. We see it all the time. And of course, we've seen Derrick Lewis knocked out as well. So I think this is a really good test for where Diniz is at from a striking perspective, a power perspective, and a durability perspective. Because if Diniz comes into this fight and he eats some big shots from Derrick Lewis, and then he's looking slick, he's putting combinations together on Lewis and ends up knocking him out, then look, we've got a real striking problem on our hands with Diniz. But until we see that, we don't know. But what I do know from Derrick Lewis is, like I said, the amount of prospects that Derrick Lewis has faced on the way up. Some of these prospects are good technical strikers with striking backgrounds, and Derrick Lewis has just knocked them out and proved that he's the better MMA fighter time after time. We've seen it so many times. But then also, the sneaky thing here is Derrick Lewis has got sneaky takedowns, and he's got a sneaky okay ground game as well. And from what I saw against Diniz having nothing on his back against Carl Williams, I think Derrick Lewis has got a path to victory here to take him down and ground and pound him as well. He's got some deadly ground and pound. I'm telling you now, in that round 3, if that's Derrick Lewis on top of Diniz and not Carl Williams, I think Lewis puts Jhonata Diniz out of there. So, yeah, look, you've got Jhonata Diniz, who I believe is absolutely better technical striker if he's got power as well. We've seen Lewis knocked out before, so I'm not going to be shocked if Diniz wins. But I'm going with experience here. I'm going with Derrick Lewis, who's got insane power. It doesn't matter if you're a better technical striker. If you get hit by Lewis, you can go out. But then also Diniz has got a hole in his game where Lewis is okay, sneaky okay with his wrestling and grappling, potential second path to victory. I think it's going to be a fight that someone is going to get knocked out, but when it comes to pick and prediction, I'm looking for extra edges that I can get. So for those reasons, I'm picking Derrick Lewis to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got Mike Malott versus Trevin Giles. Now, Mike Malott coming off that shocking performance against Neil Magny, where he was looking absolutely phenomenal for 2 rounds, styling on Neil Magny. Neil Magny, a gatekeeper that beats a lot of the top of the division, or at the time he was. And Mike Malott comes in there looking like he's absolutely top 15, top 10 worthy at that point. He's 2-0 up on the scorecards on all cards. Then he goes into that 3rd round. Suddenly Caio falls off a cliff. He gets taken down. Magny gets on top of him. And then it's like Malott just, all the fight, all the human fight just completely disappeared on him. And then he gets finished. That's what I mean by shocking. It was so like, it's very rare we see a fighter just, fall that quickly off a cliff in a fight, especially in a fight where he was looking for, all he had to do was just not get finished in round 3. Even if he's taken down, just tie Magny up, stay safe. You're about to win 29-28. Magny's not going to 10-8 you. The only way he's going to beat you is by finishing you. And yeah, look, it was surprising, but I suppose you have to give a pass to some of these fighters because this is the fight game and strange things do happen and anomalies happen, and sometimes you just have to give the fighter the benefit of the doubt. And until we see it happen a second time, I'm not going to hold it against Mike Malott, especially not, in regards to fighting outside of that level of Magny. Maybe the next time that Malott has that super step up in competition against that gatekeeper type of fighter, maybe we can talk about it then. But like I say, I'm not going to hold it too much against him. And in this fight with Trevin Giles, I think he's got a really good fight ahead of him. Trevin Giles is a fighter that's also been really inconsistent, that has had some strange performances in the UFC. He's a fighter that, look, I've got absolutely nothing against him, but he's a fighter that I've bet against Trevin Giles quite a lot in the UFC, and I've got a net profit of betting against him. I must have. I haven't got the numbers in front of me, but I don't see how I don't have a net profit of betting against Giles, because I tend to have a good read on the types of fights where Giles is going to struggle against. I'll give you a really good example, actually. When Dricus du Plessis fought Trevin Giles, pretty much everybody I saw was all on Trevin Giles. I took du Plessis, believe it or not, plus money against Trevin Giles. So, yeah, look, I think that Mike Malott, the UFC have given Mike Malott a good rebound fighter. After what happened last time out, I can't imagine how much that will affect Malott from a mentality perspective, from a psychological perspective. He must have been kicking himself watching that fight back. So coming into this fight against Giles, I think he's got a good fight ahead of him. I think he's going to be the better striker. From a grappling perspective, it's funny actually, because Malott and Giles have had a grappling bout on Fury Pro Grappling, and Mike Malott won by decision. So we already know from a grappling perspective that Mike Malott's the better grappler. When it comes to the wrestling, again, it's going to be close. I think Malott would be able to take Giles down if he wanted to. Then on the feet, I just think that Mike Malott's a better striker as well. I think he's more aggressive. Technically, I think he's more sound as well. And although it seems strange saying this, I think that if any fighter's just going to be super inconsistent and fall off a cliff and, do something that he's not supposed to do, it is more likely to be Giles. We've seen it before, unforced errors and mistakes. I think Giles is definitely prone to that, even though, like I'm giving Mike Malott a pass from what happened in his last fight. So yeah, I think Malott's got a lot of upside here. Better striker, better grappler. Wrestling, think it's going to be close, but I wouldn't rule out Malott being able to take Giles down if he wanted to. So yeah, I think it's a good fight for Malott to bounce back for those reasons. I'm picking Mike Malott to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got Jamey-Lyn Horth versus Ivana Petrovic. And from a betting perspective, this is a line that I'm actually quite surprised about, because I'm sure that Petrovic is like a plus 200 underdog in some spots, and I really don't get that line. Like, is the fight going to be close? Yes. Is it going to be competitive? Yes. Is Petrovic, a clear winner? No. Is Jamey-Lyn Horth a clear winner? Also no. Like, I think it's going to be a close and competitive fight. I think they're both really well matched. Like, they both have decent striking. They've both got decent wrestling, grappling. So I think that, I think it's going to be a really close fight. I'm really surprised to see Horth that wide as a favourite, if I'm being honest. I mean, if she was like a slight favourite, with her being from Canada, the hometown advantage, so to speak, I could see that. But I think Petrovic being out at plus 200 doesn't make too much sense. But I could also see her losing. Like, the one thing that I will say with Horth that I think if this fight plays out a certain way, Horth might be able to look like the wide favourite that she is. So that's the one thing that I'm sort of battling here with Petrovic. And what I mean by that is Horth has got this. If you remember Holly Holm in regards to being able to tie fighters up against the cage and just slow the fight down, be physical, land some strikes inside the clinch, do just enough to maybe stop the referee from splitting you up away from the cage. The referee will give warnings, but then you'll do a little bit of work and it'll reset the referee for another 30, 60 seconds. And I think that grinding clinch game is a game that Horth's got, and she's got the physicality to get away with that. Like, she is very big. You can see that she's physically strong as well. The thing is with Petrovic is actually, from a physique perspective, Petrovic isn't a million miles away from Horth. So again, it's going to be one of those fights that, and I've already said it in this podcast once, I'll say it again, I've said it so many times, the hardest thing to predict pre-fight in MMA is who's going to have the more physical advantages in the fight, who's going to be stronger, because we just seriously do not know that until they tie up, and unless it's really, really, really obvious, it's very difficult to predict, and I don't think it's obvious in this fight. But what I'm saying is, if Horth does get a hold of Petrovic, puts her against the cage and out physicals her, for a lack of a better phrase, then I could see Horth potentially covering that betting line, because if she can do that for 3 rounds, it's going to give Petrovic absolutely no chance to even do anything. But the thing is, Horth had a big physical and size advantage over Veronica Hardy in her last fight. And although she did pin Hardy against the cage, especially in the 3rd round more than the first 2, Hardy was consistently able to get out of that clinch and get back striking, where she was doing really good work. Hardy also showed that from a grappling perspective, she was better than Horth when the fight got taken down to the mat. Horth was making some unforced errors in regards to the scrambles, and that's where I think Petrovic is actually going to be really good here. I think Petrovic is going to be the better grappler, and I think within the scrambles, she's going to be able to, definitely take advantage of any unforced errors that Horth makes. So yeah, I think it's a close fight. From a distant striking perspective, I think Petrovic is okay as well. I think they're very well matched there. I think from, an all-round, stylistic matchup here, I actually think Petrovic has got a really good skill set. It's just, what's bugging me is Horth could just clinch up with her and probably use her physical advantages to get that grind on and just make it so Petrovic is not, there's not a lot happening in the fight, but the judges have to score a round to one fighter, so they're going to score it to the fighter that's holding the other one against the cage in the clinch. So maybe Horth has that game plan, but look, if Petrovic can escape from these clinch positions, or maybe even reverse the positions, if her physical strengths match up well against Horth's physical strengths, I think Petrovic wins this fight. And that's the side where I'm going to be leaning, because I do think, look, even if Horth is getting, 3 minutes of control time against the cage, if they separate out in distance and Petrovic lands some good strikes on Horth, then I'm hoping the judges are going to score the right way. Of course, they didn't the last time this happened. The most notable fight with Jose Aldo and Mario Bautista could be that type of decision that we see again. It really could be. But like I say, from a judge's perspective, we've got no idea what they're looking for. We're going to have no idea what they prefer on the night. They'll probably change what they prefer and what they're looking for in between fights as well. So you just don't know. I think it's going to be a really close, sweaty decision. I'm going to side with the underdog. I'm picking Ivana Petrovic to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got Chad Anheliger versus Cody Gibson. And this is going to be a banger, I think. I think this is a really good fight. Chad Anheliger, he's constant forward pressure, foot on the gas, will come forwards. He's got bombs in his hands when he lands as well. So Cody Gibson's got to mind his P's and Q's. But where Cody Gibson comes in is, dude absolutely loves a scrap. He's got that dog in him in MMA. He'll stand, he'll trade. I don't think he's got that raw power as much as what Anheliger's got. But again, you talk about these new gloves. I'd be more confident with the older gloves from what I've been seeing recently, that Anheliger could land that one shot that changes the fight. Maybe doesn't knock Gibson out, but hits him hard enough where it changes the course of what's happening. But with the new gloves, I'm just not as confident of that happening, especially with the lower weight classes. I think Cody Gibson can take a shot anyway. He's tough, he's durable. So yeah, I think it's going to be a banger. I think both fights are going to stand in the middle. They're both going to trade. I think if it does go to a bit of wrestling and grappling, that's more on the side of Gibson, which is the reason why I'm leaning Gibson here, because I do think if the striking's close, if one fighter does want to take it, in a slightly different direction, he's got a second path to victory potentially with the wrestling and grappling. But like I say, if this fight even on the feet becomes a bit of a dog fight, I think Cody Gibson's got the bigger dog in him than Chad Anheliger. So yeah, I think it's going to be a banger. I think it's going to be a good fight, but I'm picking Cody Gibson to win this fight. And in the next fight, this betting line went crazy. We've got Ariane de Silva versus Jasmine Jasudavicius. Now, I'm going to be super transparent here, actually, and I'm going to tell you exactly where I'm at with this. I actually had a written breakdown for Jasmine Jasudavicius to better for this fight, but because Ariane de Silva, which some, by the way, may still know as Ariane Lipski, it's the same fight, she changed her name, but Ariane de Silva, she's a fighter that does have some good qualities. She was on a winning streak until her last fight against Karine Silva. So I genuinely thought Jasmine Jasudavicius was around minus 175. I thought, I think the line's going to come down. I think we're going to see some silver bets on the underdog. Ariane de Silva seems to be always a popular player as an underdog. So I thought, look, if Jasudavicius can come down to sort of like minus 155, minus 150, I thought that's where I'm going to bet her. So that's on... I'm tracking this line all week. It's flipping from like minus 165, minus 175, minus 180, back to minus 170. So I'm thinking it's in the range here. And I think the last time I checked was maybe Saturday morning, UK time. So bear in mind the UFC was on Saturday afternoon, so I didn't look at any lines for any future cards that day. I was just focused on, enjoying my Saturday of football and then of course UFC. So then I looked the following morning at the line, and that line went up to like minus 250 for Jasudavicius, which is insane. Like, somebody dropped an absolute hammer on Jasudavicius. And look, if that hammer was dropped at like minus 160, minus 170, then fair enough, they've got a good bet. But man, like that line just jumped really, really quick to the point of now it's just completely out of range of value. Like, I don't know what anybody expects to do with Jasudavicius at minus 225, minus 250, because for as dominant and as grindy as Jasudavicius has been in the UFC lately, this is why I liked her. I liked her for that physicality, getting in close, pinning Ariane de Silva against the cage, taking her down, doing good work on top. Then maybe de Silva gets back up, but then Jasudavicius just rinse and repeats. Ariane de Silva actually does a really good job striking. I think she's going to be the miles better striker here. It's just Jasudavicius doesn't allow that. So from that perspective, I really like Jasudavicius, but Ariane de Silva's got a good enough advantage in this fight for the minus 225, minus 250 line of Jasmine Jasudavicius to just be not worth the juice just isn't worth the squeeze there. So I think that, yes, Jasudavicius wins this fight. Really, really gutted that the line went. And now I don't even know if it's going to come back down, because I'm surprised it went up like that anyway. I was kind of expecting Jasudavicius to close it maybe around like a minus 150 favourite, which, again, I think would have been a good betting spot. But up at minus 250 now, it's not for me. But I do think she still wins the fight. There's just that pause, because sometimes, look, if Ariane de Silva does start breaking away from the clinch, if she can defend some of the takedowns and get out into the open space, we're in the bigger cage here now, we're in a real arena, she's going to have the advantage of striking. So that's my pause on it at the current line. But yeah, from a pick and prediction perspective, I'm picking Jasmine Jasudavicius to win this fight. And in the next fight, we're back in the UFC heavyweight division. We've got Alexandr Romanov versus Rodrigo Nascimento. Now, I'm not sure what really went wrong with Alexandr Romanov, because, look, from a paper perspective, when you look at the performances just on paper and the statistics, Romanov really hasn't done anything wrong or anything too surprising that you can hold it against him for, because he went 5-0 in the UFC, fighting probably lower level competition or very stylistically favouring competition, shall we say. So, like, for example, a Marcus Rogerio de Lima, I think de Lima's the better overall fighter, but stylistically, de Lima's got massive holes in his defensive and wrestling and grappling, and that's where Romanov took the fight. So, that's what I mean by that. And then he lost against Tybura. Then the fight after that, he gets knocked out against Volkov. Then his next loss in the UFC is Jailton Almeida. So, those three losses against are against fighters at the top of the division, or maybe not so much Tybura, but Tybura's been around in and atop of the rankings in the UFC for years and years, so you can't really hold them losses against Romanov, but it's only when you actually watch the fights and actually follow Romanov as a fighter where something's not quite right, because, in that fight against Tybura, the cardio falls off a cliff. He just doesn't look like the same fighter. There was also another one of his fights that he won against Juan Espino. I think he got away with one there. And again, that's where we really started. That's the first hole that we saw with Romanov, with his cardio falling off a cliff and his willingness to fight and dig deep. And then obviously, he got away with that fight. He got some wins after that, and then, like I say, that's when he starts fighting the fighters at the top of the division. Good experienced UFC fighters, that the problems started happening. And with Romanov, like I say, something just went wrong. He starts coming in on fight week much heavier than he's ever come in before. He's looking like he's carrying some bad weight with him. Like I say, heavier, looking out of shape. Then he starts changing training camps. Like, I'm sure, I could be wrong here, I'm sure that he was training at a really good gym, like an American top team at somewhere before, on his win streak, but then he takes his camp back to Moldova, and you look at where he's training now for this fight against Rodrigo Nascimento. He's training that looks like, the only way I can describe it is like a man-made shed at his house. Like, it's you can physically see the wooden like four walls, if you like, and then he's got a matted area, he's got a heavy bag in there. You've seen like one training part. Like, this is a UFC level fight, and it looks like he's training in a shed at the bottom of his garden. Like, yeah, I just don't know where it's gone wrong for Romanov, because he's a really good wrestler. He's got some good grappling as well, offensively. So yeah, I'm just not sure. Now, in this fight against Rodrigo Nascimento, this is a guy that I couldn't really find too much for him training at ATT, but I think he is, because I'm pretty sure he posted a picture with like an American doctor that works with the ATT guys. So I'm pretty sure that he's at ATT, even though I've seen no footage of it. But we've got a Rodrigo Nascimento that's very likely an American top team, like he has been for years, that is going to be trained well, he's going to be prepared well, he's in one of the world's best facilities, whereas Romanov's in what looks like his shed. And then from a training partner perspective, who's Romanov got in Moldova in his shed? I don't know. Rodrigo Nascimento's got, world class experienced UFC level heavyweights to train with in this world class facility with the, some of the leading MMA coaches in the sport. From that perspective, like, it's hard to really trust Romanov. And then I actually bet Romanov in his last win against Ivanov. So even in that fight, yeah, look, Romanov won convincingly, but man, there's just something with the performances, just the pace, the intensity, the belief, it just seems to have been sucked out of Romanov. It's really hard to get behind him. And like I say, I know Rodrigo Nascimento's coming off a knockout loss with Derrick Lewis, but look, Derrick Lewis does that to pretty much everybody. And Nascimento was actually looking good up until that point as well. So I just think Nascimento's in a better position, a better place right now in his MMA career. From a stylistic perspective, I do expect Romanov to potentially be a hell on wheels for a round against Nascimento, but Nascimento's a legit, grappler, MMA grappler, and he's training at a gym that he's going to have good wrestling training as well. So even if Romanov does get him down, I don't think Romanov does enough in that round one to finish Nascimento, and then I think we're going to see the cardio fall off a cliff again. And then look, I specifically said earlier on that Romanov's got good wrestling and grappling from an offensive perspective. Defensively, I think he's got holes there. Look, if Nascimento gets on top of Romanov, especially when Romanov's tired, I think it's a real problem for Romanov. All things considered, I just find it really hard to get behind Romanov, and I find it hard to trust him in this spot as well against a fighter that I do think is going to be quite stoic up until he hits like the top sort of 5 of the division where you start meeting your Derrick Lewis's. I think Nascimento is a very serviceable ranked fighter in the UFC, whereas Romanov, I think, is on his way out of the rankings. I think that's the trajectory he's on right now. So for those reasons, I'm picking Rodrigo Nascimento to win this fight. And in the next fight, apologies if I get this pronunciation wrong, we've got Seri Sidi versus Garrett Armfield. So again, this is a really interesting fight. Seri Sidi came in as a favourite in his last fight against Taveras, and I liked Sidi in that fight. I thought that Sidi had a good fight ahead of him. They'd already fought before, Sidi had beaten him, but then Sidi just didn't look how he looked in their first fight, and I just don't think that... I don't know, maybe it was UFC debut jitters, maybe you can put it down to that. I think Sidi's actually a decent fighter. I think he's well-rounded. You know, from a striking perspective, you can see he's tall and long, but then he's at Niagara top team where they do wrestle quite heavily, I'm told. So, you know, Sidi's got a wrestling and grappling game as well. He's, like I say, he's a really well-rounded fighter. And I think he's one of these fighters that is always going to be relatively difficult to beat, not just because he's got this insane pace and pressure, which normally falls into that category of very difficult to beat, but just because I think offensively and defensively is very sound everywhere. A bit like how Belal Muhammad is. Obviously, City's not on the level of Muhammad, but what I'm saying is when you're okay offensively and defensively everywhere, you're always going to be tough to beat, especially at this level. But then Garrett Armfield, on the other hand, Armfield's one of these types of fighters as well. He's a good striker, good wrestler, good grappler, well-trained as well. So I think that it's a very close and competitive fight. Like, Garrett Armfield, I think, has fought the better level of competition. He's got more UFC experience. And because of that, that's why I'm leaning more towards Armfield here. Like, am I going to be surprised if City comes in and wins? Well, no, he's taller, he's longer. I think from a technical and volume perspective, he might do a really good job here as well. But the thing is with Armfield, Armfield will push forward, he will walk through strikes, he's tough, he's durable, and then, like I say, he can land on you with those strikes, then mix in the wrestling and grappling when he's close. And again, from a wrestling and grappling perspective, from what I've seen, I think Armfield might be better here. The striking, I think, is going to be close, but the striking depends on the range. If Armfield sits on the outside, then he's going to lose the fight. But it's very rare we see Armfield do that. He'll come forward and he'll get inside of boxing range where he can decide whether to strike combinations or level change. And if he fights at that range more often than not in this fight, I think he's going to win the fight. So I think the striking range will determine which fighter has the better moments and which fighter will win and lose. And I just trust Garrett Armfield a little bit more in this spot than I do with Seri Sidi. So for those reasons, I'm picking Garrett Armfield to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got Aiemann Zahabi versus Pedro Munoz. And this is a fight I've been having problems with as well from a prediction perspective because, look, everything tells you that Munoz is the more experienced fighter. He's been fighting at the higher level. He's absolutely fought and beaten fighters way above the level that Zahabi is right now. And everything tells you that, look, Pedro Munoz is going to put on a performance here and beat Aiemann Zahabi, but there's just something in my gut that's, again, it's always a tough one to trust your gut. You know, you normally like to trust what you see with your eyes and, you know, your analysis, but yeah, there's just something with Zahabi here. Like, Zahabi has these moments. Like, a few years ago, I think pretty much everyone was writing Zahabi off. You know, he didn't live up to the hype and the potential. But again, I've said this before, the hype and how everyone was sort of portraying Zahabi was just not his fault. He was coming from an elite gym where his brother is one of the world's elite MMA coaches, and everyone put so much pressure and hype on Zahabi. Look, it wasn't Zahabi's fault. He didn't come into the UFC asking for this hype. You know, it's the fans and the media that put the hype on Zahabi. So because of that, I feel like we do see Zahabi in more of a negative fashion because he was this hype train that never lived up to it, but it was just never his fault. Whereas now he's starting to really put some performances together. He's winning when we're expecting him to potentially lose or drop a loss, and he's getting wins and he's looking okay. And you're thinking, well, now Pedro Munoz is not in his prime so much anymore. You know, he's closer to the end of his career than he is to the beginning. And you're thinking, is Munoz slowing down a little bit? Is he on a decline? If he is Zahabi catching Munoz at exactly the right time? Maybe he is, but I haven't seen so much of a decline from Munoz at this level in the UFC. If Munoz was fighting like a top 5-10 guy, then yeah, I could be sat here thinking, well, right, Munoz is still a good fighter, but at this level he's probably not quite there yet anymore. But Zahabi's not at that level, so maybe Munoz. Look, these two fighters are catching each other at the right time. Like Zahabi's potentially on his way up, Munoz is potentially on his way down, and they're catching. I think though that maybe Munoz is still got that level above Zahabi. That's the way I'm leaning anyway. Like, I'm not going to be shocked if Zahabi wins this fight, if he catches Munoz on a, if he catches Munoz on a decline, and this is the fight that we see the real decline from Munoz. Until we see that real decline at this level, I have a hard time putting too much stock into it. I think Munoz is the more experienced fighter. He's still got something about him outside of a certain level, and I think Zahabi is outside of that certain level. So for those reasons, I am edging and picking Pedro Munoz to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got Charles Jourdain versus Victor Henry. Now, what's interesting about this fight is Charles Jourdain's actually dropped down in weight. And at first I was a little bit surprised, but then looking into it, it kind of makes sense. And I kind of wonder why Jourdain's not done that before. Because at featherweight, he was always massively undersized. Like, you look at his fights against, like, Shane Burgos, for example. Like, Jourdain was way undersized in that fight, physically. He's not going to be as strong as these guys. So he always had a height, or pretty much always had a height and reach disadvantage. And we hadn't even talked about Sean Woodson as well. Like, Woodson was way bigger than Charles Jourdain. So I kind of like the fact that Jourdain's dropping down in weight, because I think he's going to be more physical at bantamweight. I think genuinely, as long as the weight cut's good, he looks great on the scales. And maybe if you are looking to bet Jourdain, you do wait until you see him on the scales first. But I think the move down in weight, we've seen from experienced fighters when they do finally make that move down. Like, look at Jose Aldo, for example. Like, Aldo, I really didn't think that was available for him to move down, but when he did, it made sense. He looks good, he's in shape, he performs still, and it kind of revived his career by moving down in weight. Like, if Jose Aldo had stayed at featherweight, like, I think his career would have been almost done by now. Like, when you really think about it, but at bantamweight, it revived it. And I think the same for Jourdain. I think, not that Jourdain's old or anything. Like, he's still really young, and he's much younger than Victor Henry, by the way, which we'll get into. But I think this is a good move for Jourdain. If the weight cut's good and he looks good on the scales, then I think he can be more efficient at this weight category. Now, Victor Henry, like I just said there, Henry's like 37 years old, I think. Like, he's old. And look, age is just a number. And Henry's performances are actually pretty good. So maybe you can overlook the fact that he's that old, but at some point the age will catch up to you. Father time catches up to you. Like, Father time waits for no man. It enters certain fighters' lives before others, and maybe Victor Henry is one of the lucky ones right now. And like I say, he is a tough fighter. He's got good striking. He's got good grappling. His grappling's actually really good, and then his wrestling's okay to go with it as well. So Victor Henry is a good all-round type of fighter, but so is Charles Jourdain. Like, Charles Jourdain's got good striking, he's got good wrestling, he's got good grappling. Now, Jourdain can get taken down. I think maybe Victor Henry might have that in his game plan, but Jourdain's grappling's good enough to even lock onto a submission. Like, if Victor Henry shoots a sloppy takedown or a desperation takedown, or it's not set up quite right, then Jourdain will be able to lock onto a guillotine, maybe, reverse during the guillotine, get a mounted guillotine. Like, Jourdain's a tricky grappler, and I think this is a really interesting fight because, like I say, both fighters are tough, both are durable, both like to put the pace and pressure on their opponents, and one fighter is going to overwhelm the other, in my opinion. I think that it's going to be Charles Jourdain. I think Jourdain is going to match the intensity, the aggression of Victor Henry. I think he's going to be strong for this weight class as well. So if Henry does try to get a hold of him, I think Jourdain's going to feel, a lesser strength than what he's been dealing with these massive featherweights. And naturally, Victor Henry isn't going to be as strong as a Shane Burgos or a Sean Woodson. Like, he's just not. So I think that Jourdain's going to have a good physicality, or I won't say a physicality advantage, but he's gonna have an easier time with the physicality against Henry at bantamweight than what he would with these bigger guys at up at featherweight. Like Gian Silva, the dude's an absolute tank. Like, Jourdain is gonna have an easier fight physically here than he has done at featherweight, and I think at home in Canada, every time he's going to land, the crowd are going to be going nuts. He's going to be exciting. And I think unless he's knocked out by Victor Henry, because Victor Henry can be aggressive, he can hit hard. Unless Jourdain's knocked out, I think he's going to have a good fight here. I think if it goes to a decision and it's close, I think the crowd getting behind Jourdain's going to help as well. So yeah, look, I like Victor Henry's game. He's aggressive. He's well coached. He's good everywhere. But so is Charles Jourdain. And I think Jourdain coming down in weight is going to revive his career, set him up for, a new run in the UFC. And then with the crowd behind him at home as well, I think there's just enough upside here on Jourdain. So for those reasons, I'm picking Charles Jourdain to win this fight. And in the last breakdown of this episode, we've got Jack Shore versus Youssef Zalal. Now, this is a really good fight. Like, stylistically, it's a great fight. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be competitive. I think they both match up really well. Jack Shore has definitely not got that aggressive, relentless Brazilian brute force in this fight with Youssef Zalal. Like, look, I bet Jack Shore in that fight with Joanderson Brito. I thought from a skill set perspective he's okay, but man, Brito just ran through him. He was on it that night. He was aggressive. I think they ended up saying that Jack Shore's leg was broken, or he had a fracture or something from the leg kicks of Brito, which, just tell you he had that massive gash in his leg, if you remember. But then also Brito was at home. We had the crowd behind him screaming, "You're going to die" to Jack Shore. All those chants that the Brazilian MMA fans get behind. And it just wasn't the night. When you put everything together, it just wasn't Jack Shore's night. He wasn't able to perform. He wasn't able to do anything. He had this brute force Brazilian powerhouse coming at him that's just great everywhere. It just wasn't Jack Shore's night. Whereas now he's got Zalal. Now Zalal's a good fighter. So it's not as if Jack Shore's got an easy fight or anything here. And actually Jack Shore's like a plus 200 underdog, which again I think is crazy. But Zalal doesn't have those same types of characteristics as a Brito, and it's not as if Jack Shore's fighting in enemy territory either. So I think that Jack Shore's going to have a fight where he's able to just fight this time, be able to show his skill set, be able to show what he's been working on, and be able to perform like he just wasn't able to do that last time out. And I think that's going to make a real difference. I kind of think that the betting line is reflective of what happened against Brito, and we're just not going to see that same fight here. We're going to see a Youssef Zalal that is not as aggressive as Brito. He's well-rounded, Zalal. He can strike, wrestle and grapple for sure, but he's just not that brute force powerhouse that Brito is, which means that Jack Shore's going to be able to have moments, get reads, and maybe adjust himself inside the cage to be able to have some success. And I think it's going to be a close and competitive fight. Like, the striking out edge slightly towards Youssef Zalal, but the wrestling and grappling, I would edge towards Jack Shore. The grappling is close because Zalal's a good grappler, but because I think Shore's going to be the better wrestler, or at least the more willing wrestler, he's going to be the one that's having the moments on top, which means he's going to look like the better grappler. So I think it's a close fight. I think it's going to be one of them where if there's not a finish, I don't think there's going to be a knockout in this fight, if I'm being honest. If there's a submission, I would probably more put it down to Jack Shore submission game, because I think he's going to be the one that's more likely to be on top of Zalal. So maybe the finishing / submission upside is on Shore, but I think the most likely outcome is that this fight goes to a decision. And if it does, I think Zalal's going to win a round along the way. I think Shore's going to win a round along the way. I think one of the rounds, or maybe even all three of the rounds, are going to be super close, and we're going to get to a decision where, it's going to be close. It's going to be close. It potentially a split decision. Maybe there's, the judges are looking for one thing over the other, and I just think it's going to be a close, competitive fight where they both match up really well from a skill set perspective. And I'm going to side with the underdog for that reason. I'm picking Jack Shore to win this fight. And that's all for this episode of the podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. As always, it's always appreciated. We had a lot of comments and people posting replies onto our YouTube video last weekend, and again, I try my best to get through all of them. I think I pretty much did as well. It's nice to have these conversations, to get another perspective, to get other people's opinions, where you're betting, who your lock is for the night, because I know a lot of people like to post with their best bets or your best underdog, who you're most confident in. So yeah, it's really good to have the community just commenting, and we can go back and forth on some things. It's always polite and friendly with me, so I'm never taking offense or being aggressive or telling you you're wrong or anything like that. So yeah, if you are listening on one of the podcast platforms like Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, you can jump over to our YouTube channel, drop a comment on there and have a conversation with me. I am very busy throughout my weeks, as I always say, so I do try and get back to all comments and try to have those conversations with you. And of course, if you are on YouTube, then please drop a subscription to the channel, because it really does help and we always really appreciate that. And aside from that, one more time, if you're wanting to jump into the action this weekend, then do so at MMA Play 365. We've got something for every type of gambler. The prices are super affordable, which allows you to win your money back as quick as possible, so you can start profiting on your bets, which is our ethos here. And that's all at MMAplay365.com. I'm Newsome. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again next week.